My fiancé proposed his dad, also my boss replaced me, with my fiancé's ex. It's nothing personal, Olivia, Richard Clark said, leaning back in his leather chair and not even bothering to look me in the eye. The Jenkins case requires someone with more specialized experience. I stood there, stunned. The Jenkins case was mine. I'd spent months building it from scratch, working 16-hour days, sacrificing weekends, all to prepare for what could be the biggest corporate lawsuit of the year. Specialized experience, I managed to say, my voice surprisingly steady despite the earthquake happening inside me. Richard, I've been preparing this case for 6 months. I know every document, every witness, every potential angle. Richard finally looked up, his steel gray eyes, so much like his son's, showing nothing. Vanessa Morgan is joining us from Caldwell and Schmidt. She has more trial experience with these types of cases. Vanessa Morgan. The name hit me like a slap. James's ex-girlfriend from law school, the one he dated for 3 years before me, the one who supposedly moved to Chicago for a better opportunity. Is this because I am marrying James? I asked directly. Richard's expression hardened. This is a business decision, Olivia. You'll support Vanessa as second chair. Re-in from her. If you perform well, there will be other opportunities. I wanted to argue, to fight, to remind him that I'd billed more hours and brought in more clients than any other sixth-year associate. Instead, I nodded stiffly. I understand, but I didn't understand not yet. 3 hours later, I was sitting at my desk staring at engagement ring photos James had texted me. He wanted me to pick my favorite before dinner tonight. The irony was crushing. My phone buzzed with a call from James. Hey, I answered, trying to keep my voice normal. How's my future wife? His voice was cheerful, oblivious. Made any decisions about rings yet? I hesitated. James, did you know Vanessa is back? Too long of a pause. Dad mentioned something about a new hire, he said carefully. She's not just a new hire. She's taking over the Jenkins case. I've been demoted to second chair. Another pause. I am sure Dad has his reasons, Liv. You know how the firm works, Pettish and all that. James, your ex-girlfriend is now my boss on the biggest case of my career. The same day you are planning to propose. Former girlfriend? He corrected quickly. Ancient history. Look, I know it's awkward, but I am sure Dad saw something in her that would benefit the case. You are still involved, right? That's what matters. I closed my eyes, counting to 10. Does she know about us, that we're together? I haven't spoken to her, James said, and something in his tone made me doubt him. Look, we'll talk about this tonight, okay? I've got a client meeting, love you. He hung up before I could respond. I sat there turning my phone over in my hands when Maya, our IT director and my closest friend at the firm, stopped by my office. Hey, you okay? You look like someone just stole your puppy. I gave her a quick rundown of what happened, Vanessa Morgan. Maya's eyebrows shot up. James's ex, that's not weird at all. Apparently it's just business, I said, mimicking Richard's tone. Maya leaned closer. Well, you're almost being Estez's ex just got here and she's already making herself comfortable. She's in the conference room with the senior partners. Great, I muttered. I should probably go introduce myself, already playing the supportive second chair. That's Sperry, playing the supportive second chair. Mature review, I shrugged. What choice do I have? As I approached the conference room, I heard laughter. The door was slightly ajar and I could see Vanessa, tall, elegant, with perfect honey blonde hair, standing near the window. She looked more polished than I remembered from the photos James had shown me. I was about to push the door open when I heard my name. Olivia Peters. Vinci the one dating James? Someone asked. Engaged, apparently, Vanessa replied, her voice smooth as silk. Or soon to be. Poor thing has no idea what she's walking into. More laughter. Richard was very clear about the arrangement, she continued. I handle the real work, she gets to play pretend lawyer for the clients, and everyone's happy, especially James, someone added. And they all laughed again. I stood frozen, my hand still raised to push the door as the floor seemed to drop away beneath me. What exactly had I walked into? Chapter 2. The investigation. The next morning I arrived at the office before dawn. If I was going to prove my worth, I needed to know the Jenkins case better than anyone, especially Vanessa. The office was empty and dark. As I made my way to the file room, I pulled the physical case files first. Some things I preferred to review on paper before logging into the system to access the electronic documents. To my surprise, several folders had been restricted overnight. Access denied. The screen flashed when I tried to open financial records I'd been reviewing just days ago. I texted Maya, Fennett emergency, Khalees on me. Asterisk 20 minutes later she appeared at my office door, coffee already in hand. What's so urgent at 6:30 a.m.? I showed her the access denials. I've been working on these files for months. Suddenly I am locked out. Maya frowned and took over my keyboard. Let me see, fired. These permissions were changed last night at 11:42 p.m. That's odd timing. Can you tell who changed them? She typed a few commands. It came from Richard's admin account, but it wasn't necessarily him. Senior admins can authorize permission changes. Can you fix it? I asked. Maya gave me a look. You realize you were asking me to override your future father-in-law's system permissions? I am asking you to help me do my job, I corrected. I need those files to properly support the case. After some hesitation, Maya worked her magic. Though you've got temporary access, but I can't promise it'll last. Be quick and don't download anything suspicious or we'll both be in trouble. Thank you, I said earnestly. Once alone, I dove into the financial records. The Jenkins case involved alleged corporate espionage against our client, Meridian Rob Pseudotools. They claimed their former CFO had stolen proprietary research and sold it to a competitor, Novak Health. As I reviewed the documents, something caught my eye. Discrepancies in Meridian's R&D expense. Reports small ones, but consistent. Amounts that didn't match across different financial statements. I was so absorbed that I jumped when my phone buzzed. A text from James. Shim breakfast, asterisk. I glanced at the time. 8:15 a.m. I met James at the Calafri across from our building. He looked impeccable as always, but there was tension around his eyes. You left early, he said, kissing my cheek. Wanted to get caught up, I replied, accepting the coffee he offered. Routinely, I am locked out of half the case files now. James frowned. That doesn't sound right. I'll talk to Dad about it. I found something strange in the financials, I said, watching his reaction carefully. Some inconsistencies in Meridian's reporting. His expression flickered concern. Alarm? What kind of inconsistencies? Nothing major. Just some numbers that don't add up across different reports. Could be accounting errors or could be nothing, James said dismissively. You know how these corporate reports get, WEG departments? Different reporting standards? Still worth looking into, don't you think? James hesitated. Look, Liv, I think you might be overthinking this. Don't go creating problems where there aren't any. Just focus on supporting Vanessa and doing what's asked of you. His response felt oddly dismissive. Speaking of Vanessa, I said carefully. When did you find out she was joining the firm? James stirred his coffee, not meeting my eyes. Dad mentioned it a few weeks ago. It wasn't confirmed until recently. A few weeks ago, and you didn't think to mention it to me? I didn't think it mattered, he said. It's not like we're close anymore, right? I said, unconvinced. embarrassed. That's why you keep a photo of her in your desk drawer, James stiffened. You went through my desk. I was looking for staples last month. The photo fell out. It was an odd picture of James and Vanessa at some lake, both smiling widely, eyes like an odd keepsake for someone who's ancient history. It's nothing, James insisted. A memento. I'd forgotten it was even there before I could press further. His phone rang. It's Dad, he said, looking relieved at the interruption. I need to take this. As James stepped away to take the call, I noticed Vanessa entering the Fiancé. Her eyes locked on James immediately, and a small smile played on her lips. Not the polite smile of a professional colleague, but something more intimate. She approached him while he was still on the phone, touching his arm in greeting. James looked startled, then quickly ended his call. They exchanged words I couldn't hear, then both glanced in my direction. James said something else, and Vanessa laughed as they walked toward me. I noticed they moved in perfect sync, like dancers who knew each other's rhythms by heart. Olivia, Vanessa said warmly, as if we were old friends. I am so looking forward to working with you. James has told me so much about your dedication. I smiled tightly. Funny. He's told me almost nothing about you. The way they looked at each other told me everything I needed to know. And as we sat there making strange small talk, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was the only one at the table who didn't know what game was being played. Chapter 3. The betrayal the next week passed in a blur of late nights and mounting frustration. Every suggestion I made for the Jenkins case was politely dismissed by Vanessa. Every document I prepared needed revisions. Every client call somehow happened when I was in another meeting. I was being systematically pushed out of my own case Wednesday night. I was working late combing through deposition transcripts when my office phone rang. Miss Peters, this is security. Here is a package for you at the front desk. I didn't remember ordering anything, but I headed down anyway, grateful for the break. When I reached the lobby, the security guard looked confused. Package? No one called about any package. A chill ran down my spine. I hurried back to my office and found my desk had been searched. Files I'd carefully arranged were slightly out of place. My laptop had been moved. Most concerning, the notes I'd been compiling about the financial discrepancies were missing. I called Maya immediately. I need to see the security footage from my floor. Kaiman's been in my office. Meet me in the server room, she replied without question. 20 minutes later, we were looking at the feed. Kiger enough, someone had entered my office while I was downstairs, a slender figure in a dark blazer. Can you zoom in? I asked. Maya enhanced the image, and there was Vanessa rifling through my desk, quickly photographing documents with her phone before rearranging them. Your almost mother-in-law is a sneaky one, Maya murmured. Why would she need to sneak? I wondered aloud. She has access to everything on the case already, apparently not to whatever you had on your desk. I thought about the missing notes. I need to see if she's meeting with anyone. Can you check other floors? Maya typed rapidly, bringing up different camera feeds. Nothing on partners' floors. Wait. She paused on the footage from the 42nd floor, mostly empty offices used for document storage. There, in the dimly lit hallway, Vanessa was talking with someone. When they stepped under a light, I felt my heart drop. James, they weren't just talking. His hand was on her waist, heads close together, the body language unmistakable. Maya started. Keep watching, I said, my voice hollow. We didn't have to watch long, within minutes. James pulled Vanessa into an empty office, closing the door behind them. I'm so sorry, Maya whispered. I sat there numb as pieces started clicking into place. The demotion, the restricted files. Can you get me footage from the last few weeks? I need to know how long this has been going on. Maya hesitated. You sure you want to see that? I need to know what I am dealing with. The footage showed similar late-night meetings going back at least 3 weeks, well before Vanessa's official arrival at the firm. I don't understand, I said mostly to myself. Why the elaborate setup? Why not just break up with me? Maya looked thoughtful. Maybe. It's not just about you and James. What do you mean? Those financial discrepancies you mentioned. What if here is something bigger going on? What if they needed to get you away from the case for another reason? It was a disturbing thought, but it made sense. I'd started noticing the accounting issues just before my demotion. I need to get back into those files, I said, standing up, and I need to make copies of everything. Be careful, Maya warned. If they're trying this hard to keep you away from something. I know, I replied grimly. Back in my office, I worked until dawn, combing through every document I could access, making secure copies of anything suspicious. By morning, I had compiled enough evidence to know something was very wrong with Meridian Rabceuticals' financials. I was so absorbed that I didn't hear James enter until he spoke late night. I looked up, forcing my face to remain neutral despite the footage burned into my memory. Just trying to be thorough. Vanessa expects a lot. That's why she's so good, he said, then hesitated. Listen, about dinner tonight, I need to reschedule. Emergency client meeting with Vanessa? I asked innocently. A flicker of something guilt crossed his face. It's a team thing. You weren't included because Dad thought you should focus on the deposition prep. Of course, I said. Tanner understand. He seemed relieved at my easy acceptance. You are the best. That's why I love you. He leaned down to kiss me, and it took everything in me not to recoil. After he left, I stared at the engagement ring on my finger, the one he'd finally given me after that awkward dinner the night Vanessa arrived. It felt like a prop now, part of a performance I hadn't realized I was in. My phone buzzed with a text from Maya. Shin found something, my office now. Asterisk, I hurried to meet her, finding her door closed and locked, unusual for Maya. What is it? I asked after she let me in. You are not going to believe this, she said, turning her monitor toward me. I was checking system access logs, and look who accessed the financial records you were locked out of. The screen showed Larity activity for several accounts, including one that made my blood run cold. G. Clark Sr. almond James's account at 2:17 a.m. Accessing files, then modifying them. He's altering evidence, I whispered. No, Maya corrected grimly. He's altering evidence after someone else already altered it. Look at the file signatures. These documents have been modified multiple times by multiple accounts. I collapsed into the chair beside her. They're all in on it, James, Vanessa, Richard. The question is, Maya said quietly, what are you going to do about it? I twisted the engagement ring on my finger suddenly, seeing it for what it really was. Not a promise, but a collar first, I said, slipping the ring off. I'm going to stop pretending. Chapter 4. The setup. The next morning I arrived at work with two things. A plan and no engagement ring. James noticed immediately. When I walked into the morning staff meeting, his eyes fixed on my bare left hand, then darted up to my face, questioning. I gave him a small, sad smile, but said nothing as I took my seat. Richard was at the head of the table with Vanessa at his right, my former seat. I sat at the far end, opening my notebook as if nothing was wrong. Before we begin, Richard announced, I want to address some concerning developments that appear someone has been accessing confidential client information without authorization. His eyes swept the room before landing on me. The firm takes client confidentiality extremely seriously. If the unauthorized access continues, we will be forced to take disciplinary action. The threat was clear, clear and clearly directed at me. Now regarding the Jenkins case, he continued, Vanessa will present our updated strategy. As Vanessa launched into her presentation, I noticed several key documents were missing from the slide deck, specifically the financial record with discrepancies I'd flagged. When she finished, Richard asked for questions. I raised my hand. Yes, Olivia. Richard set his tone, suggesting he was merely tolerating my input. I am concerned about the financial evidence we're presenting, I said calmly. There seemed to be inconsistencies in Meridian's quarterly reports that could undermine our position. The room went quiet. What inconsistencies? Vanessa asked, her voice sharp. The R&D expenditures don't match across different filings. If Novak's lawyers noticed, they could argue Meridian was deliberately misleading investors. Richard's face hardened. Those documents have been thoroughly vetted. With all due respect, I persisted. I've been tracking these discrepancies for weeks. They're subtle but consistent. I'd be happy to walk through the specifics after the meeting. That won't be necessary, Richard said dismissively. Vanessa has the case well in hand. The meeting wrapped up shortly after, with people filing out quickly, no one wanting to be caught in the tension between me and the firm's leadership. James lingered, approaching me as I gathered my things. Can we talk? He asked quietly. About the ring or about the case? I replied, keeping my voice low. Both. My office. 5 minutes. I nodded, then headed to my office, first to collect the documents I'd hidden. Just as I suspected, my desk had been searched again overnight. Good thing the important files weren't there in James's office. He closed the door behind me, his expression a mix of concern and frustration. What's going on? Liv, W, here's your ring. I sat down calmly. I think you know if this is about working late. I told you. It's not about working late, I interrupted. It's about you and Vanessa sneaking around behind my back. It's about the three of you pushing me off a case because I was getting too close to something. It's about financial records being altered to hide evidence. The color drained from his face. You don't know what you were talking about, don't I? 42nd floor, empty offices, late night meetings, accessing files at 2 a.m. to change numbers. Ring any bells? James sank into his chair. You've been spying on me? That's what you were concerned about? Not that you've been cheating on me or potentially committing fraud. He ran a hand through his hair. It's complicated, Olivia. Then uncomplicate it for me, I challenged. After a long pause, he sighed. Vanessa and I. It never really ended. When Dad saw an opportunity to bring her back, we thought we could handle it professionally. By demoting me and lying to my face? I asked incredulously. The demotion wasn't personal, he insisted. Dad was concerned about your focus on those financial records. Meridian is our biggest client. Their CFO assured us those discrepancies were clerical errors that had already been addressed with the sexy, and you believed that it wasn't my place to question it. So the plan was what? Keep me engaged to you while you continued seeing Vanessa push me to a different department eventually? How long was this charade supposed to last? James looked genuinely pained. I do care about you, Liv, just not enough to be faithful or honest. I stood up. I deserve better than being collateral damage in whatever game you are playing. As I reached for the door, James spoke again, his voice hardening. Before you do anything rash, think about your career. Dad won't take kindly to accusations against Meridian or the firm. I turned back. Is that a threat? It's a reality check. No law firm in the city will hire you if Dad says you are trouble. And trust me, if you push this, that's exactly what he'll say. The mask had finally slipped, showing me who James really was. I'll take my chances, I said quietly. I'd barely made it back to my office when my phone rang. Richard wanted to see me immediately. His office was as imposing as ever, with its wall of legal awards and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Vanessa was already there, seated comfortably as if she belonged. Close the door, Richard instructed as I entered. I did so, then stood waiting. I wasn't going to sit unless invited. A small act of defiance. Olivia, I'll be direct, Richard began. Your performance has become a concern, Vanessa. Report you've been undermining her authority on the Jenkins case. I've been doing my job, I replied evenly, which includes identifying potential issues that could harm our client. Your job, Richard said coldly, is to support lead counsel, not pursue unauthorized investigations into our client's finances. You unauthorized, I echoed. I was the lead on this case for 6 months. Those discrepancies emerged during my legitimate case preparation. Discrepancies that Meridian has already addressed, Vanessa interjected smoothly. Your continued focus on this non-issue suggests a lack of judgment or a commitment to thorough representation, I countered. Richard leaned forward. Let me be absolutely clear. You have 2 options. First, you submit your resignation, effective immediately, with a generous severance package and a neutral reference. Second, I file a formal complaint alleging breach of client confidentiality, which would likely result in termination and potentially affect your standing with the Bar Association. The threat was unmistakable. You are trying to silence me, I said quietly. I am trying to protect this firm and our clients from a disgruntled employee who can't accept a change in status, Richard replied coldly. And if I have evidence of financial fraud, evidence that's already been securely copied and stored? A flicker of alarm crossed Richard's face, quickly masked. That would be a serious accusation, Miss Peters, one that could constitute defamation if unfounded, I smiled thinly. Then it's fortunate I have the documentation to back it up. Richard and Vanessa exchanged glances. You have until tomorrow morning to make your decision, Richard said finally. I suggest you think very carefully about your future. As I turned to leave, Vanessa spoke up. Oh, and Olivia, James wanted me to ask for the ring back. Family heirloom, you understand? I met her gaze steadily. Funny, he told me he bought it new. Just one more lie, I suppose. The look of surprise on her face gave me a small moment of satisfaction. As I walked out, back at my desk, I found a notice. My system access had been restricted to basic functions only. No case files, no email, no client data. They were already pushing me out. My phone buzzed with a text from Maya. They're monitoring your account. Need to talk. Usual place. 7 p.m. Asterisk. I grabbed my personal items, left my work phone on the desk, and walked out of Clark & Associates without looking back. The game had changed. They thought they were setting me up for a fall. They had no idea I was several steps ahead. Chapter 5. The Brevior. I met Maya at our usual dive bar 8 blocks from the office, far enough away that we wouldn't run into colleagues. She was already in our corner booth, laptop open and 2 beers waiting. They locked me out completely, I said, sliding in across from her. I know Richard's admin sent an all-staff email about temporary system maintenance. That just happens to affect only your access points. Maya pushed a beer toward me. Drink. You look like you need it. I took a long sip. They gave me an ultimatum. Resign quietly or face termination and possible bar complaints, bastards, Maya muttered. But that's not why I asked you here. I found something. She turned her laptop toward me. Remember how I said the financial documents had been modified multiple times? I tracked the access logs back 6 months. The screen showed a complex table of Samps and user IDs. The pattern started exactly 8 months ago, Maya explained, right after Meridian's stock took a hit from that failed drug trial. See these entries every quarter right before earnings reports. reports. Someone accesses these specific files and makes changes. Who? Multiple accounts always late at night. Richard's mostly, but also James's. And this one. She pointed to an unfamiliar ID belongs to Vanessa. She had remote access to our system long before she officially joined the firm. They've been cooking the books for Meridian, I said, the pieces falling into place. But why take such a risk? The firm's reputation is worth millions. I think it goes deeper, Maya said, pulling up another file. I found this buried in Richard's encrypted email archives. The document was a complex financial statement showing millions flowing from an offshore account to various recipients, including substantial payments to Clark and Associates marked as consulting fees. These aren't on the firm's public billing records, I noted. Exactly. And look at the source. Maya pointed to a name at the top of the document, Helios Holdings. Who's Helios Holdings? A shell company, Maya explained. But guess who owns the patents that Meridian was accused of stealing from Novak? My eyes widened. Helios, Maya nodded. It gets better. Plio, who sits on the board of Helios. Richard Clark and Edward Jenkins, Meridian CDO. I sat back stunned. They're not defending Meridian against corporate espionage charges, they're covering up their own theft. Bingo, Maya said, taking a sip of her beer. They stole Novak's research, patented it through Helios, then licensed it back to Meridian. The lawsuit is just theater, a way to make it look like Meridian is the victim, not the perpetrator, and the financial discrepancies I found were probably payments to Helios that needed to be hidden from shareholders and the sex. Maya finished. When you started noticing them, you became a liability. I thought about James's behavior, Vanessa's arrival, my sudden demotion, but why not just fire me? Why the elaborate scheme with Vanessa? 2 reasons I think, Maya said. First, firing you without cause might have raised questions. Second, she hesitated. What? Your family connections? Your uncle sits on the state ethics committee for attorneys, doesn't he? And your cousin works for the sex, I nodded slowly, understanding dawning. They were afraid I'd talk to my family if they fired me outright. So instead they brought in Vanessa to push you aside professionally while James kept you distracted personally. If you left of your own accord broken-hearted over James's infidelity, no one would suspect the firm was hiding anything, I finished. I'd just be another jilted woman. I drained my beer, anger burning through me. We need to take this to the authorities, not so fast, Maya cautioned. We still need concrete proof connecting all the players. Right now we have suspicious financial records and some questionable emails. We need someone on the inside to confirm what's happening. Someone like a senior partner who might not be involved, I suggested. Exactly, and I think I know who. Maya pulled up a personnel file for Patricia Winters, the only female senior partner at the firm. Asked the other partners, her system activities showed no involvement with the altered files. Patricia was the one who originally championed hiring me. I remembered Richard overruled her on several occasions when she wanted to give me more responsibility. She might be our best shot, Maya agreed, but we need to be careful if she's loyal to Richard. I've got an idea, I said, pulling out my phone. But first we need more ammunition. For the next 3 hours, Maya and I pieced together the evidence, creating a clear timeline showing the systematic fraud and cover-up. By midnight, we had a comprehensive file documenting every suspicious transaction, every altered document, and every late-night system access. We're way past lines now, I replied grimly. I installed a small program on your work computer before they locked you out. It's been recording audio in your office. She pulled up an audio file. This was captured about an hour after you left today. The recording began with the sound of a door opening, then James's voice. She knows something. How much? Richard's voice tense. I am not sure. She mentioned the financial discrepancies, said she had copies stored somewhere safe. A woman's voice. Vanessa, you should have kept her under better control. Don't start, James snapped. This affects all of us if she goes to the sex with what she knows. She won't. Without firm resources, she can't prove anything, and no one will believe her once we're done discrediting her. What about her family connections? Vanessa asked. Already handled, Richard replied. I've spoken with her uncle, expressed concerns about her mental state, suggested the pressure of the job combined with personal issues might be affecting her judgment, and he believed you, James, sounded skeptical. He's an old friend and I was very convincing. The recording continued with them discussing how to ensure I couldn't access any more information, with Richard instructing James to deal with any personal items I might have left at his apartment. Burn it all, Richard said. We can't risk any notes or documents falling into the wrong hands. The audio file ended and I sat in stunned silence. They're trying to destroy my credibility before I can even speak out, I finally said, which means we need to move faster than they expect. Maya replied. Are you ready for this? Once we start, here's no going back. I thought about the months I'd spent building a career at Clark and Associates. The relationship with James I'd thought was real, the respect I believed Richard had for me. All lies. I am ready, I said, my resolve hardening. Let's burn it all down. Chapter 6. The plan. By dawn, we had our strategy mapped out. Maya headed home to get some sleep before her shift at the firm, while I checked into a hotel under a fake name. I wasn't taking any chances with James potentially showing up at my apartment. At 9 a.m. I called Patricia Winters on her private line, the number Maya had discreetly obtained from the firm's confidential directory. Patricia Winters, she answered crisply. Miss Winters, this is Olivia Peters. I apologize for calling your private line, but it's urgent and I didn't want to go through the firm's switchboard. A pause. Miss Peters, I heard there was some situation developing with you. Richard was quite vague on the details. I imagine he was, I replied. I'd like to meet with you privately regarding some concerning information I've uncovered about the firm's handling of the Meridian case. Another pause, longer this time. That's a significant request, Miss Peters, I understand. But before you decline, you should know that what I've discovered involves potentially criminal actions by Richard James and Vanessa Morgan. Actions that could implicate the entire partnership if they come to light through official channels. Are you threatening me, Miss Peters? Her tone was cool but not hostile. I am offering you a courtesy that Richard didn't extend to me, the chance to protect yourself and the firm from what's coming. The line went silent for so long I thought she might have hung up finally. The West Side lady, noon today. Come alone and be discreet. Thank you, Miss Winters, I said, relief flooding through me. One more thing, could you bring the original Meridian engagement let